I just walked up to the camera, whatever feature that it had on it caused the video to automatically start. Wasn't really ready, but I'm gonna just jump into it because it started. So, yeah, here we go. My intention for this particular video is different from the previous ones, and I would like to set the precedence for uh, different intentions pointing towards the major singular intention of the human element. And the single intention of the human element is hard for me to encompass. It would benefit me to put it to words, and the best way that I could do that is spells, certain spells that are cast upon my mind and the mind of people who I love are not okay. And they're not okay to the extent to which I despise them. And not only do I despise them, well, let's say I have good reason for it, it causes more harm than good. And it's difficult to break these spells with the practices that we build while we're under the spell. So we come here with our downloads of how we're supposed to navigate reality. Some of them better than others. Some of them, there's a scale for it. But we come here getting downloads, and everybody in different cultures and different sections has their own approach to certain things. That's the way things go. But each culture also has their biases. And if there's a bias, there's a blind spot. Because if there's a bias, that means that you're not able to put on your own blinders to find the blind spot, which is why justice is blind. Justice is blind, so there are no blind spots with a justice when it comes to enacting justice. Justice is blind, so there are no blind spots. Justice is not biased. So when you add your bias and things of that nature to a certain extent within your operations, you exit yourself from extracting real truth as far as navigating the world is concerned. So I'm aware, or super sensitive, I say is a better word, as to the spells and the inefficiency of the spells to the point to where I can actually put them into words. And I realize that I can put them into words to the extent to where I could bring things to conclusion, which is a sign of mastery, I would say. I could wrap things up and I could connect the dots. I'm using my power to wrap things up and connect the dots to tackle a spell or a myriad of spells knotted together. But as I go along, I think we'll come to find that it's a singular spell. I'll give it a name after. Close my window. So today we're going to be analyzing I guess the category is group politics, perhaps. I'm not exactly sure what the categories these as, but I do know how to break this down as far as the elements are concerned. So I have a problem, or I have many problems with many things, and I'm handling the problem. I'm getting to it. I need help with the problem, but I need to be the one to initiate that which would allow me to be helped with this problem. So I'm just doing my part. Just doing my part at the end of the day. So I got Black Lives Matter here and I got LGBT here. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on here is a lot of lies and a lot of manipulation and a lot of the old program seeking to fight for its life, right? In the Matrix, the Oracle would speak about what would happen when a program is about to die. Programs can retaliate against their death. What does that mean? I'll start with Black Lives Matter because if you're in the know-how of real things or things that are more real than not, I would like to keep my language balanced so I'm not making unnecessary exclusions or judgments. Honestly, the only way I could break down Black Lives Matter is from my own personal interpretation of it. For me to escape that would be wrong. So, truthfully, I don't really know anything about these two as it pertains to what it was designed to make me think about them. As far as what it was designed to make me think about them, I don't really have any thoughts about them. But I do have my own thoughts. So I'll start with the Obama era. And to highlight the inner workings of this spell, I would start with how powerful it is to have the amount of black votes that was had when he was becoming president. And if you wanted to be truthful and be honest and be forthcoming, black people could say that they voted for Obama because he was black. And it's not like there wasn't good reason from the perspective of the diaspora to take that stance. And that's part of the game, right? And that's why people are positioned in certain places at certain times to get certain things. Something very interesting happened during the Obama era that I like to highlight and then move on from. Very, very quickly. Not really keen on getting too wrapped up into politics, though I do have the ability to pick them apart in a certain extent. Obama era was an era that I vividly recall to be the era in which black people received the most psychological warfare from the media as far as the struggles of what it means to be black and the narrative that we're always under attack. So the Obama era had a bittersweet effect from my perspective, where it definitely seems intentional from my intellectual mind to get black people to feel proud, to get them to become emotionally invested in the politics, and then have that channel towards the representative, which was supposed to be Obama. And I would say how much he represented is up to debate. And I don't want to have that debate because I don't really keep up with politics. So as far as all the little things that he did, it's like, But under that era, during his time, in which it was just so interesting how you would expect someone to say certain things for their people. And beyond that, if you're not going to do that, right? If you're not going to do that, it's also very strange that a narrative is allowed to pervade for years, because I have a very great memory. And I realize that some people struggle with memory, so I'm using my memory as it comes to me. This wasn't a couple of months of police brutality videos, it was years of it. And that's the magic of the media, is that if they start a topic, now it's the topic. And when the topic goes, what do people care about? What do you care about when you don't have someone telling you what's going wrong? Do you have the kind of heart to where you wouldn't need to be told by certain people what's going wrong? So, police brutality and then the victimhood mentality of black people, and black people have had their struggles, and that will come in detail as soon as I post this. The collective conscious is gonna just do whatever it does to assist the point that I'm making here and unraveling and getting to the root of it and solutions and just doing my part. But that's the thing with the cultures. I would say, as far as black people, we are the most influential, and so that means that we have to have the largest, heaviest chains on us, and those chains are not physical. Example, I don't want to go off the rails, but one of those chains I always felt personally was the idea of a black card. Black people create these spells that limit black people from being black people, because there's a narrative on what it means to be black people outside of actually being a person, because the person comes before the attribute, and the qualities that you use to describe the person come after the person. In every area except identification. So we're like identity obsessed, but at the same time we struggle to conceptualize identity, which is also funny about society. And also funny about society is that as much as identity has been brought up, there's not a cohesive effort to bring clarity on to what identity is. I don't like when black people tell me how to be a black person. I don't let that happen. Why? Because I'm a human being. I'm not gonna let slaves keep me with the chains. You don't know who I am, and you don't know what I can do until I show you that I can do it. And I'll show you when I'm ready, because there's a lot of things going on. I'm ready now. The Obama era had years of psychological warfare in the manner of videos, old and new, perpetrated throughout years, day in, day out, month after month, of a narrative continuously to create a prolonged theme of victimhood within the black community. That theme was always there, but for this particular time, it needed to be exaggerated, and it was highly exaggerated. And I'm not saying that police brutality isn't real, but I am saying that when it comes to narratives and the people who pose them, they also have the ability to cheat they have the ability to boost their narrative by creating fake scenarios. Moving on. Taking that into account and moving on, it's just interesting how black people were given that high to get him into office, and then after he got there, the intention that was really there all along, which was to keep people in a subdued, low vibrational state of defeatedness and clinging to that which does not serve them. That was all there during that Obama period. And then the Obama period ended in a certain manner that led to another period. So Black history has a lot of history to it. There's a lot of sabotage, both inside and outside. That's, going back recently. And there's a lot of infighting and things of that nature because of things that happened thousands of years ago that most would think are irrelevant, but we're going to keep playing this out until we decide to pay attention. I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim. If I'm being taken advantage of, I'm participating in a scene of life in which I am being taken advantage of. From my perspective, in life, in these scenes, there are some where I have control and some where I don't. And some where I don't, if I don't have control and something terrible happens to me, that means I've been taken advantage of. And the paradoxical effect of that is, I would love to say that directly, because of that situation, that you would be a victim, but victim wouldn't be the term. I would say that you have been apprehended and targeted and taken advantage of and subdued and suppressed. But to end that all in saying that you're a victim is short-sighted, because of all the many cases in which a person could be in that scene of life to where they're being taken advantage of and they're being usurped. And these things happen. And after a while, that person decides to take things into their own hands. They decide to go outside the box of they decide to challenge it despite being in the scene. Right? And that was one of the sad things that happened with the girl who got raped and killed the offender, and how they handled that case, right? Because then that also sets a tone and a precedence for all cases alike. It's important for people to pick apart these things when they pop up, because if it's not picked apart when it's popped up with the appropriate verbiage and the knowledge as to exactly how that affects over time, then what you'll have is the continuation of the cycle of abuse that leads to things like this. Mechanisms, social constructs that are used to sap energy from people. They're used to, at will, prop them up and make them feel better, and then immediately draw that energy out of them and use that energy to move the mass of the people who invested that energy towards a specific direction. This is all politics. Black Lives Matter. I would love some real unity. If Black Lives Matter was made by black people, that's a different story. If black heads came together and actually convened to substantiate something like this and root it in society, it's a different story. But that's not how it happened. For all the sneakerheads that are in the community, sneakerheads, right? There's a lot of beautiful, bright minds in the community that don't have resources to things, and because they don't have resources to things, what they're actually being robbed of is the ability to confidently use their abilities towards the end that they see fit. That they're intentionally using their ability, combined with the ability to use that intention to the highest good. All of that becomes dampened down with a lack of resource. And resources is not just money. Love is a resource. It's also a distribution problem, but I have other videos to talk about the distribution of things. That's another topic. This is about this particular spell, and I'm not a fan of. Black Lives Matter is supposed to what? Represent what? That's so if black people came together, if black people came together, because black people, that's already a vague term, and if you were to loop up all of people who look like black people, they would all have different ideas of what a black person is and how that really plays out in history. So technically, from a realistic standpoint, we all know that we can't even put something together like this at all anyway. Like realistically, black people can't even do anything like this as it stands. As it stands, doing the things that we were always doing. I'm not a victim. This is supposed to represent me and all of black people. And if black people came together with their immense knowledge and resources and etymology and language, you already hear in hip hop and rap how we have the ability to put words together and use them with intention. Why would we pick Black Lives Matter? Why would we ask for booty scraps? Why am I asking for droppings? I don't think that if black people put their minds together to create something that represented black people, that they would ask for bare minimum poop water. Black Lives Matter. And the hook that they got black people with was the victim mentality. So because they gave you this victim mentality, and that victim mentality has been validated by the experience and the psychological warfare that they've been imposing on black people to validate their victimhood, black people then use that charged victimhood into something like Black Lives Matter. And then get wrapped up in the fact that someone would retaliate that, and then you call them racist, and then you get to say that you're a victim because of racism and how oppressed you are. These are real energies being absorbed from people by fake ops. It's all fake. You can't represent these people. You can't represent these people. These people didn't come together and put their 2 cents together as to what their center was. They have the same kind of dynamic black people have. It's the same thing. New niggas. Niggas. Why? Black Lives Matter? How about Black Lives Decorate? Black lives inspire. Black lives achieve. Black lives matter. So we're using our charged victimhood to defend our stance of victimhood. Parading it around, waiting for someone to deny it so that we could then validate that which keeps us in bondage. I'm not doing that. I'm not a victim. A couple of people, not from my clan, so to speak, draining energy from my clan, so to speak, and then putting it in a package to where people from my clan wouldn't recognize that this is a detriment to us. Feeding this thing, this entity that was not created by people who are willing to put their heads together to find common ground. I know there's plenty of black people who have the experience of going through that period in their life to where they're like, there's a black business here. I'm going to go in. I'm going to support them. And you go in. And what happens? They make it really hard for you to support them. What am I getting at here? People are people. And if a person sucks, a person sucks. And people don't suck as people. They just suck as the framework that they've given their allegiance to. And that's why I'm constantly changing. I'm upgrading my framework as I live my life because I'm blind. And I don't have... My phone got cut off. And I don't have biases. Or I have biases, but I'm checking my biases and I'm honestly apprehending my biases because I'm human and I'm not perfect. This is nonsense. What happened towards the end of the Obama era after black people's energy was siphoned and the victimhood that they were allowed to propagate and advertise and flaunt and raise up with all of their ego was then transferred to this side. All of that energy, all of the frustration from genuine suffering and actual encounters with things like racism and being treated other than you. Things that black people deal with. They were riled up and then milked. They keep milking black people. And black people keep letting others milk them. So that's what I'd like to move towards. I like to move towards responsibility, and I like to move towards not letting people take the easy road out. Because I've seen so much of that easy road stuff, and people have no idea what they're contributing to. You have no idea what you're contributing to. When you're sweeping something under the rug, you're only seeing what you're sweeping under the rug. You're not seeing that there's a bunch of other people sweeping that same manner of thing under the rug. And what does that mean in the realm of collective conscious? Blind spot. And if there's a blind spot, there's a lack in distribution, there's something you're not seeing, and that means that you're going to be apprehending in a way that's less than optimal. And you'll probably be frustrated because you're dealing with things in a way that's less than real, but you're scared of reality and you're terrified of reality and you're resistant to doing things in a way that would extract real knowledge so that you can base your actions off of real knowledge. It's not a game. This is not a game. This is real life. And there's really people here ready to give up. They've been saying the world was going to end since 2012. They're always going to throw that net out. They're always going to throw that spell out of world ending to catch people in it. And to this day, there's still people in it. And we're still here. We're still here. I remember when I was younger walking to school where people were talking about the world was going to end and you're standing out with the signs. What does that mean to you? Are you taking that literally? You think the world's going to end literally? Wow. The fact that could even be sold to you is representative of the lack of distribution. And I'm not talking about money. We have enough money in distribution. That's the truth. There's enough. I didn't even get to finish my point with the sneakerheads. We need more sneaker hands. For all the people in the community who have this passion for sneakers, I didn't see not one uprising yet of hood people challenging Nike, because Nike is not supposed to have, I don't even know. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about specific companies. The community is supposed to have a lock on sneakers. Since we love sneakers so much. But what is the dynamic with black people? Consumer, no produce. And all the spells that black people have been given is made to keep them in consumer, no produce. No produce. I'm producing. Pain, suffering, being alienated from society, being targeted, being attacked, being under siege. Having your achievements diminished, having your failures bloated. All that unique struggle and the energy that comes from that, sapped out by getting people riled up with their highest ideals of hope, a black president. And then he comes in, and under that period of time, black people experience the highest degree of internet psychological warfare to that date. Prolonged. Think I'm a victim? Are black people apprehended? Are they boxed out? Are they excluded intentionally? At times, voraciously? Yes, and so many other things. But if my people get their mind right, we change the structure in a manner to which people aren't in the position to exclude us. And that really just comes down to doing what's right for us. And this comes down to the human element, because all of the transferring of the black struggle to a new generation of damaged people is very deep, because abuse is a common theme amongst these lines here. It's a theme of abuse and the genuine justification of a stance of victimhood. It's very tricky, because if you want to claim that something happened to you, it's very easy to make that case. How determined are you to stick to that case? And what do you hope to achieve from sticking to it? You're hoping to achieve being validated by someone else as a victim so that you can feel better and feel seen? Black Lives Matter. So after all the struggle, and sometimes we get our minds right, we're not asking for what, like if you want reparations, you want to be paid in full, the equivalent of all your struggle. How do you then, with that same mentality, go and knock yourself down to Black Lives Matter? I need money. I need resources. Run it. Run the resources. Give the land. I'm not talking to you. I'm sorry. We are not talking to you. This is not a well, it is a negotiation. A negotiation is how much are you giving? Ask for reparations. Let's put our heads together and make a case. Both of us. You're not under my watch going to take this struggle and transfer it to a new generation of abused people, and then at the same time propagate yourself in a manner to which you can continue the abuse. I have to level up a bit because I feel like I'm watering myself down too much. I feel like I'm suppressing too much. So I'm going to amp up my truth a couple of notches. You had the gays against groomers, and then now there's not, and that this ties back into my problem with not being able to debate, and the fact that all the pillars of debating are being chopped down, such as the education. Education is tainted. So as far as what you're being educated on, it's certainly not how to think. So if you're not being educated on to think, how can you help me in a debate that genuinely leads to figuring out how we can bring this to resolve? You can't. What you can do is bring emotion, and you can bring the orchestrated, pre-constructed, packaged justification of your slave masters and use that as your narrative. That's what you can do if you don't have the ability to think. You can pick up your oppressors, curated, packaged specifically for you and all of your susceptibility, and then go out and spread that gospel. But is that what you want to do? Is that where you are in your mind? Is that where you think you are? Is that what you think you're doing? Or is the game gaming? Because the game games. It's an efficient game. That's why when a net gets cast, someone gets caught. If I'm to get caught in a net, metaphorically speaking, it cannot grab me. It's either I'm too big to get caught in the net, or I'm too small and I pass through the holes. It's one of the two. Either way, I can't stop the net from being cast on me. I'm not seeking to put myself in a position to where I never have a net cast on me, because that's very draining. What I do want to do is have the ability to navigate when a net is cast. There's always going to be someone to cast a net. And you put yourself in that position, you'll find out that nets are very weak to you. You'll find yourself operating in a manner to where the fisherman may not think about even casting it after a certain point of you operating in that capacity. So you wind up getting to that point anyway of being Not necessarily immune to having nets cast at you, but to having the rate at which they are cast at you dramatically reduced and their efficiency dramatically reduced. Trying to play on my emotions using these words and politics and people who are more susceptible, like I'm saying, balance. And one of the most un-American things that happened during COVID was how much people called each other stupid. If you call anybody stupid, you're definitely stupid. You rob yourself of a chance to figure out what's really going on. And then you just assume that your stance was right. And everybody did that. So I'm on you. I'm on all of you, actually. I'm on all your bumpers, to be honest. Black people, honestly, cannot speak for everybody in any community. It just doesn't work. There's different sects of people. You got black people who are still in that mode of sticking to the narrative of being undercut and suppressed. Meanwhile, all the things that genuinely held them down are not here anymore. This really just comes down to the psychological effect of chaining an elephant to a wall. You need to expose your grounds. There's not, like, we have cameras out now. Police brutality, I would imagine if police brutality was authentic in my world, as I consider it to be, it would be before we had all these cameras. That's real police brutality. When the cameras come out and the actual instance happens, that's not to say that it's fake. To aid my point, way less people die on bikes now. Why is that? It's because enough people got hit on bikes, and then the community realized, wait, bikes are a thing now. We are going to have to pay attention to the fact that bikes are on the road. And you know what? It makes sense that you'd have to get used to that over a time if you didn't know that bikes were going to be something that people would implement in their society at large. So when you dial the time back and you go further and further back, the bike deaths rise dramatically. And when you come here to this point, people are more scared of bikes. That's a healthy fear coming from tons of death. People just getting hit by bikes because they're new to the road. And the collective consciousness hasn't taken it into awareness that it needs to be driving with bikes in mind. Now there's bikes everywhere. It's actually way harder to hit a bike now. Way harder. It's so hard to crash on a bike compared to if you dialed the time back. It's the same effect. People are more aware of racism now. There's way more people who have white guilt now than ever before, and there's way more understanding, and there's way more people willing to help you escape your rigid programming if you're willing to generally separate yourself from it first. Can't catch me with Black Lives Matter, man. A soul family. This is the human element. The human element is supposed to be a rubric that if you align yourself with the mentality of the human element, these things would not be able to grip you in the manner that they were designed to grip you. Black Lives Matter is a net. It was meant to soak up people's anguish from years of past torment, bring it up again, revive it, perp, 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 pump, 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 and then transfer. George Floyd. If you see the video of when George Floyd was picked up by the ambulance did not come out to get him. I do not know what they were wearing. They definitely looked like some sheriff-esque characters coming out of the back of the ambulance truck. Why am I saying that? If you know about how things work, you'd know that the people who come out of the back of that truck wear certain things. You have a certain garment. And to not have that garment is very suspect. So who are these people? I'm not going to get into that. I'm just stating that for the people who have critical thinking, that the entire thing, based on what I just said and the fact that you can go back to that video and see the ambulance did not jump out of that truck, that entire thing is sketchy. George Floyd's death is sketchy. Is he alive? I don't know. Isn't he? I don't know. Was his death linked to the transfer of black people's suffering towards a new social construct that further continues that suffering? Yes. Dead or alive, the transfer still happened. And that transfer isn't even a real transfer, because as far as the human element is concerned, we're all people. And so now I'm going to bring it back here, right? Because what are the talking points of what happens when you're trying to explain to someone your stance of being lesbian, gay, or bisexual, things beyond that? There's controversy. It sucks that ignorant people bring up the Bible when it comes to things like that. It's like, bro, you're not even... The only time you really bring up God is when someone's talking about the sexual preferences that bother you. That's strange. And then that doesn't really help us now, and where God is being attacked. You know, we're all just shooting ourselves in the foot. It's a lot. I don't want to get too far off track. But what is the underlying theme of the solution from this, which claims to represent a certain group of people? It claims to represent, these things claim to represent people, and they couldn't possibly do it. They can only represent people of a certain kind within these things. And those people are most likely the people who talk the most, because they've been hurt the most and they see the last. And that's not a bad thing. That's why I'm here. And that's why the people who will come to my aid after I post this video will also be there at the time that they will be there. Victim? Well, yeah. Definitely. Of course. You're getting looped into having your struggle taken advantage of monetarily for political gain, for political position. One thing I think is strange is how much I would see, like, if someone's like in the LGBT plus side, it would just be a higher amount of people asking for a donation. It's just like if you're homeless, you have your traditional routes of being homeless. But if you're homeless and you have this, now because of the culture and because of your defenses, it makes it okay. Or not even okay, because it's always okay to do it. But you're just allowed to feel comfortable having it as an option to go online and ask people for money in times where you're not doing so well. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just highlighting the times that we're in and the times that we're coming out of. Because we're coming out of a time in which black people had a very strong ability to use their victim card and wave it around and do so proudly and do so in a joking manner sometimes. Sometimes that's abused. Sometimes it's right. And there's shades in between. We got to get our shades right. Because what's happening here is a repeat. What's happening here is someone came into one diaspora and they dealt a specific kind of damage. Now these people are familiar with that kind of damage. And then they jump over and they enter a new subgroup. They start pulling other people into this subgroup so that they have more influence. And then they just start all over again. Psychological warfare, confused people, and then there's always the people, because you can't speak for everybody. Not everybody, Black Lives Matter has this narrative of every black person is just suffering. And it's not true. It's not. I've suffered. But I don't need help acknowledging the victimhood. What I need is to move on. Like I said, it would be a beautiful thing if we dropped our biases, black people, and a couple of lawyers start putting our heads together, a couple of people from the hood, a couple of people who run the block, a couple of lawyers who know what they're doing, who have their heart in the right place, and you just put a case together, and you go take the case to where the case can be handled. That's a beautiful thing. I don't think you know how beautiful that is. Black people with their influential, powerful energies combined with a case, people who know how to work the case and people who know where to take the case to. Oh man. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, White House, what are you guys doing? We the people have a case here. We just want to talk. Come outside. You say you're for the people. Let's get to the bottom of this. But we got to love ourselves first. We got to separate ourselves from the pain that we're so addicted to using to gain benefit from. Because the pain that we're using to gain benefit from is benefiting the people who gave us the pain. We're using that pain to create a dynamic of being benefited by the pain that we were thrust into. We need to change the narrative. We need to own the narrative. I need more sneaker hands than sneaker heads. I would love to see that in the black community. In a world that makes sense in my mind, there's way more sneaker hands than sneaker heads. Nike has a monopoly. Name brand, name brand, name brand. You better love your people like it's name brand, bro. Put on for your people. Black Lives Matter. No wonder we can't have sneaker hands trying to say Black Lives Matter. Black Lives excellent, man. Black Lives rule. Man, put your head together, man, a couple sneaker hands. And that's all part of the design. You're supposed to have less options. Because if there's more ways for you to make money naturally being who you are and what you want to do, then the system that made that difficult for you to do anyway is challenged. But guess what? That system doesn't love you, doesn't love me. And now I have a choice. Am I going to partake in a system that doesn't love me and propagate it with my divine light and my divine energy? Of course not. I'd rather stay silent and stay away from people. Because I'm on 100. People thinking about having fun and stuff. Man, after COVID, all of that was done. After they put the cherry on top with psychological warfare under the Obama years, the cherry on top was George Floyd's death, and then the sketchy element of him not being picked up by ambulance, whatever that means, and how COVID started off also using some of those elements of and how COVID happened, and there was a whole lot of fear and a whole lot of things that happened, and even to this day, speaking about it, if you have access to people who you influence, and bringing up COVID is just, it's not that it's a bad thing to do. All they can do is just make you feel less comfortable doing it. So what's something that's going around today? Well, people are more soft. So what does that mean? What does it mean if people are softer now? Does that mean that you're going softer on them? I just disagree. I think if people are getting softer on them, I think you need to push on them. I think you need to shine light on them, not shine on them. See, I'm a diamond. I always put pressure on myself, and I don't like, putting pressure on other people, and I do that by not letting them know how much pressure I put on myself. And that would manifest in certain interactions to where people would say, "Well, you don't have to do that." I mean, I hear that and I don't respond, and in the back of my mind, all I can say is, "I will though." You're not gonna stop. You're not going to encourage me to stop me from picking up a weight that I voluntarily picked up to carry. I don't really care for doing easy things that much. I don't really care for being around people who are so fixated on doing easy things all the time. It doesn't make me feel safe, especially after things that happen. What happens is those people wind up needing me in those times. In the times where real things are needed, I'm going to be drained by people who invest their energy not being aligned with real. So now when real comes, I'm ready to apprehend it, and I'm the pillar of strength and the guide. And you're someone that's under my wing. That's what that dynamic becomes. It would be nice if you could use your idea of what's right and wrong and then be able to tell me, well, because no, now I'm your responsibility. Take me with you. It's like, well, now I can decide whether I leave you or not. Honestly, I like to do my own thing. I like to invest my energy in certain places at certain times. You might find yourself asked out if you're in a not so good situation. And I've been who I am, or I am who I am, which is the inspiring factor to do what you need to do for yourself so that you can do what you need for everyone else in tandem. So I am who I am around you, and none of my energy that is designed to supercharge you on that quest is used in the manner that it was supposed to be used for. So what do you get from it? I don't know what you get from it, but when we wind up in a situation to where you'll need what you could have had you used it for what it was designed to be used for, I may not feel so inclined to help you out at that point. Anyway, trying to get my mind together. I have a little cognitive dissonance. Sometimes I ramble and I don't get straight to the point, but I'm working it out. It's tricky because it's very effective to create real abuse and then thrust someone into that mire of real victimhood. It's tricky. And there's many elements. And there are elements that I have a problem with. One is what is produced by abuse and the things that we sweep under the rug that contribute to that abuse affecting future generations. Why is the trend still here? Somebody's enabling something. Somebody's not speaking up about something. I need to do my part, and my part is being done here. So I want to bring this up to a wrap because my last couple of videos have been a couple hours long. I'm not trying to beat y'all over the head, especially since this video just started randomly, and I really did want to write out a couple of points on a book before I tackled trying to bring together the detrimental elements of these two social concepts and constructs filled with destructive, inferred truths that derail people from their personal power. These are very, very good at derailing people from their personal power, and that's why if I can successfully highlight why they contribute to deconstructing a person and taking them out of their throne of power, then I can also show a person why the human element is the element that matters and is an element that they should seek to sharpen in tandem with other people, putting your heads together to find the genuine truth. Because when you find a chunk of genuine truth, you can chop through things like these. Black Lives Matter. Chop! Matter, why are you asking for less after everything that's happened? If you know anything about the black struggle and black people came together, you would never ask for anything matter. And it doesn't even line up with the theme of reparations. What it sounds like is that black people, there's black people speaking for black people that have downloads that aren't the thoughts of a black person thinking about black people. So it's cognitive dissonance everywhere, right? And that's what these things take advantage of. Like LGBT, there's a victimhood, and the victimhood has a theme of abuse. Okay, and there's so much abuse, and what happens with the abuse? So it's like, okay, so let's I was about to go off because there's a sector of people who, you know, they're not too keen of certain abusers, and they wouldn't mind dealing justice to them, right? And some of that just comes from people who want to unleash and have a good reason to do that. But the important element of that is to create a theme of fear, because the theme of fear for those kind of people, like we're in a society right now to where someone like me would be fearful about even apprehending this as a topic. So you're scared of speaking about this. You're scared of using your freedom of speech. Why? Because campaigns were run. These aren't the only ones. I mean, one of the biggest factors that it comes down to here is language, and how so black people have one element, right? And I'm going to break down the N-word. I used it in this video. I don't know how that's really going to play in the future. Don't care. So the N-word has a very unique element to where anybody can say it as long as the tone and delivery is correct. Sometimes black people don't even know this, but it's a rule as far as when you're traversing the plains of using a word that was used during a time to where people were genuinely under a grotesque human assault, a grotesque human underpinning. So this word is tied to troubling times. What do black people ask? Sometimes they don't get it. Just don't use the word. Just don't use it. And if you're gonna use it, get your tone right. Say it with your chest. And if you can't get your tone right or say it with your chest, black or white, don't say it. So, although we could pick apart that morally, right? Because I could morally pick that apart and call it wrong. And I would be right. I could definitely pick apart how it would be wrong to basically shut out people from using a particular word. But then, given the history of things and how things unfolded and the extremity of it all and how real the actual realness of the extremity is as it pertains to racism and its suppression, it makes sense that black people would ask for this one word not to be used. Just don't use the word. And that's what black people have on their side as far as the diaspora. And then you get to this side, and then there's a whole seizing of language. I grew up grammatically adept. I grew up understanding elements of etymology very well. My linguistics very well. Reading and writing very well. I'm currently friends with people who know what adjectives, pronouns, and nouns are like naturally. Like I kind of got fuzzy on that part. And I mean, after all of the absolutely botched mental conceptualizations that have been coming out recently, used to enable people who are supposed to be represented by this group, used to be able to supposedly represent people by this group because supposedly representing them, but what it's really just giving them is something that's less than reality, and it's putting them in a position to be further damaged as abused people. For the most part, not speaking to all of them. Not everybody in here, like I'm saying, you can't speak for me. Not everyone in here is damaged. Not all black people are suffering. Anyway, same thing for we're all people. If you sit the line at a person, you'll find out you have less problems. And that element, the human element, has been used to, I would say, misguide people in this region as to how they would handle being treated as a human. Because humanity is not being mentioned as far as a retaliatory reason in this section here. The approach is, let's seize the language. So over here we have one word, but over here we just have a whole seizure of the structure of language. Like structural language, as if English isn't already impeded as it is as far as translating higher emotions and higher experiences, limited in that capacity, as if that isn't already true in itself. So now you have an influence wave coming out. Woo, woo, woo. You get this wave coming out, and the wave says, well, we'll take it a step further from us asking that you can't say one word. We'll take it a step further. And now I'll say that you have to address me as I wish to be addressed, and to not address me as such. It's basically like it's really the same as black people as far as getting defensive. And as soon as I say that black lives don't matter, you then enable a black person to get riled up in all their frustrations about racism. Like, that's why Black Lives Matter as psychological warfare is considered. It was just really good words to pick, because from someone who doesn't know any better, picking it up and running with it, if you put this in someone's face and you try to validate it to see if it sticks, Black Lives Matter, and then they deny it, then that means something to you. It's like, wow, I said Black Lives Matter and they didn't resonate with it. Racism is real. Victimhood perpetuates. Same thing over here. Well, actually, it's she. Jeez Louise. Oh my God. Wow. I wish, well, actually, it would be nice if the suffering and all of the struggle and overcoming that my people went through would have afforded them the ability to restructure how people address them with impunity. Wow, and the expectancy behind it. So there's an arrogance behind it. So people are enabled to be arrogant in the truest form of arrogance. And that arrogance is individually justified by the mind with the victim narrative and the manner in which they were given to retaliate in the first place. Who's teaching you how to retaliate and fight for your humanity? They're not doing a good job. I'm not really invested. Like, I'm not getting the whatever supposedly assistant concepts are given in this community, because apparently you're supposed to be helping these people. Wow, you're gonna go around and then tell people who grew up winning spelling bees. You're gonna take people who grew up picking apart prefixes, suffixes, people who are good with syllables and figuring out the origins of words. And then you're going to bypass your lack of understanding in those regards and say, this is how you must address me. That's psychological warfare in action. What does that lead to? It leads to the kind of conflict that benefits the people who caused this in the first place. Infighting. We're on the same team. We're on the same team. We're all water droplets in the same bottle. If the inside of this bottle is messed up, it's going to affect every droplet inside of it to some degree. So we came over here, we said, you know what, after everything we've been through, just don't use this one word. And that was under the alias of extreme amounts of abuse. And over here, we're not trying to compare the abuse. We're not bringing up who suffered more than who. The common theme is suffering and abuse. And it was dealt in a very similar manner for similar intentions to keep people in a certain mental state because they have the ability to change things. We have the ability to change things. There's so many people, talented people, wise people, capable people, loving people, generous people, people who mean well. Here. And then there's a whole bunch of other kinds of people mixed into it. And how could you represent all of them and all of their voices and all of their talk points? You can't. You can't do it. It's not possible. That's not the right way to do it. If you want to do this the right way, you got to break yourself, fool. Break yourself. Build your tolerance to having your reality challenged. Because if you're not doing that, then you're not getting closer to reality. And if you're not getting closer to reality, don't go around assuming you know what's real 100%. Be more skeptical. Think about your life. Consider you don't know anything. And the baseline that should bring you to is to not accept things at face value. That's the baseline. Because it scales up into a lot of responsibility of what I said. But if you want to take a simple step, just open your mind and open your heart. There's people in both of these things, and they block themselves off from people who would be able to exchange something that benefits both parties. And I separated these two. So what happens if a black person comes over here, right? So now we have a whole muddying of we have a mixing of these elements, these detrimental elements coming from both of these. And what do I mean by that? Like, and I guess JP would be the best to break that down. It just gets complicated if you're separating the two, and you're separating things that can't even be separated. And you're always going to have people who have mixtures and elements, and maybe, you know, the whole figuring things out thing. So, I mean, they're not really separate insofar, even as the fact that they're not called the same thing. They still have a lot of the same people in it, dealing with the same kinds of struggles. But because of the individual culture and susceptibility to ignorant things that someone would be susceptible to if they have high amounts of bias and allegiance to their ignorant programmings, then yeah, it's going to be hard for us to exchange the things that we need to exchange. I just broke down a lot. I didn't even want to get into the COVID thing. You guys should consider that you're powerful people. If my people wasn't so powerful, then they wouldn't have to pull games like this to where they install people at high points to motivate our people, and then they dim our light down by showing us being beaten on streets and dragged and things that are like all over the web, broad daylight, like it's nothing. Constantly, month after month, year after year, under a person who's supposed to be like us, under someone who looks like us. It's just about being a person. If you're more aware that these things are even possible, you're more aware of navigating life in a way that's more real. These people don't love you. If anything, there's more love being sent back and forth between these two than the supposed elements that are supposed to support the individual groups. LGBT has done way more for black people than Black Lives Matter. Black people have done way more for the people in this community, where basically a lot of it gets mixed in anyway. And these are minorities, I guess, if we're going to use that term. So we're not talking about large chunks of the culture anyway. And that's another point. So we have these groups, and it makes sense. One culture says, don't say this, and that's the iteration. And then the abuse comes over here, and everyone gets coerced into dumbing themselves down and jumping out of certain conversations that are considered taboo. But who made it taboo? And the person and the entity behind making it taboo, is that an entity that you want to enable? Can you pick apart why it was put in a category of taboo in the first place? Or do you just notice that everyone's not speaking about it and you jump in the bandwagon of not speaking about it? And by doing so, you perpetuate the actions of society that lead to ignorance of how to deal with that thing in a way that integrates it healthy chaos. How are you going to do that if you're not talking about it? And how are we going to talk about it if we can't think? And how are we going to think if our schools aren't teaching our children how to think? Of course, if you're in an unvoiced, underrepresented group, as far as you feel, you would want to influence your struggles and your experience in the future generation. So, of course, if they were going to bring conversations going along the lines of educating children what happens under this category here, of course there's going to be people for that. And of course there's going to be people against it. And that's the human element. Never underestimate the beauty of someone's ability to disagree with you and how much that can change and embolden you to live your greatest life by giving you something outside of what you would find operating in the way that you're used to operating. Never downplay the fact that you have a domain. And because you have a domain, you have a blind spot. And in that blind spot is someone else's domain. And they have mastery over that. And they can assist you in a way to where you would conserve a lot of energy trying to exit your domain and master an entirely new one. Just by exchanging blindly, so to speak. We have our blindness placed in the wrong places. And that's why we can't see. If we were blind where we needed to be blind, we wouldn't have blind spots. Justice is blind. Justice gets the job done. Couldn't get done any other way as far as the domain of justice is concerned. Bringing things to correction, balance, optimal sustainability. We need to start being more sustainable with our concepts and things that we accept so that we can perpetuate something that actually benefits our children to make sense of things. I need to represent the intelligent. It's getting to a point now to where people don't even know people don't even know that they're not thinking. But imagine if someone could learn that they're not thinking, and then from that knowledge, which isn't necessarily a good thing, And then they feel beautiful from it. They feel exalted. They feel powerful. They feel vibrant, and they feel alive. Why is that? Because they were given the human element. And the human element is not one specific thing. It's an approach. It's partly structured, partly unstructured mechanism. Structured where it needs to be, fluid where it needs to be. That produces the highest yield. The human element is designed to make navigating life and all of its intricacies easier. And maybe not easier, but to make it visible, to make it attainable, to make it a walkable path. Because the elements that have been and are continuing to be perpetuated do not contribute to people being. If you take all of the energy and suffering and you transfer it over here and you give people the power to seize language, one minority is charged by the fact that they were unvoiced at a certain point, not recognizing that they are currently one of the most voiced voices, drowning out other minorities. So what happens? A cycle. The victim card was once over here. We had it, we loved it, we played with it, we didn't deny it, we made love to it, and then it got taken from us because it was never ours. And it was given to them, and now they're playing with it, and now they're doing what they want with their egos with it because they're allowed to do it, and the media is saying that they're allowed to do it, and because that is what it is, then that's what they're going to do. And then at some point, that's going to be taken from them whenever it's deemed fit, because they're not even unified in the real sense to be able to hold on to that microphone, so to speak. The microphone was taken from black people, so to speak, as far as their ability to use the victim card, and how much weight that held has definitely decreased over time. And not even in a real sense, just as far as the representation of media and the narrative is concerned. Tap in, peoples. I just wanted to highlight the sensibility of not asking people to use one word, and how that was blown out of proportion. And that blowing out of proportion is used to aid people who are not benefiting people. So the people who are not benefiting people empower damaged, abused victims. And then those victims carry out the will of the people who do not have the best interests of the people. And then those people carry out the will of the people who do not have the best interest of the people. The same way black people who supported Black Lives Matter supported it with such vigor. And it was created by Soros. And all the things that he and his partner was aligned with that had nothing to do with the benefit of black people. Nothing to do with it at all. And all the money that was made here. So much money. Oh my God, Black Lives Matter made so much money. My people still don't have reparations. None of that money went towards any sort of reparations of any kind. Rent is still being raised. Why is there scams being run in broad daylight, usurping the pain of abused people? Whether it be because of their race or their sexual orientation, creed, color, age. This is old stuff. This is stuff that people have already boiled down with certain elements that are supposed to be priority. There's certain elements that are supposed to be priority, and if you prioritize them, you won't be susceptible to things like this. And if you're not susceptible to things like this, then they lose their ability to live as a program, and another program has to take over. So what's the underlying theme of these programs here? Fear, abuse, victimhood, not being in your personal power, not being in a master of the universe. The addiction to using all the points that come therein. The fact that all of the things that are perpetuated in society as far as supposing to be aiding us and making us easier are actually just keeping us in the ability to perpetuate our own victimhood. So we perpetuate our own victimhood, and then we get mad that we're victims, and we want to retaliate. But who are we retaliating against? We're just retaliating against ourselves. We don't know we're retaliating against ourselves because the people who give us the idea of what we're supposed to be retaliating against, the people who give us an idea of the thing that we're supposed to be retaliating against, and the way that we're supposed to be retaliating against, and how much sense it makes to approach things in that way, tainted. Love people. Stop saying men this, women that. Check yourself. Check yourself on when it's just a people thing. Sometimes it's just a people thing. And if you do that, things become real simple. Racism is real stupid. Why? So what's the underlying theme of racism? I mean, can we say that racists are united in their racism? Can we really? It seems to have a counter element to it. Like if you dial the time back and you're a white person who helped a black person, you would be considered, they had a term for it or whatever, and that wouldn't look so good on your reputation, and maybe that made your social life a little bit harder, and maybe that was the equivalent of something that's happening now as far as the pressure that's coming from people saying that you can't say particular things and use particular language, and that you have to say certain things a certain way. Do you know what you're enabling? Do you really know what you're enabling? So whoever those people were when you dial the time back, and those people who played the role of telling one white person that they're lesser than white because they helped the black person in a time in which black people needed help. Is that different? Fundamentally, I mean, the essence is just controlling speech, right? At a very specific time in a very particular place. Controlling speech from having a certain voice being heard. And it's weird how better the mechanics get over time, as far as how alluring they are and emotionally investing they get. It only gets more efficient as far as looping you in. And what does that lead to? Paradoxically, you get to see how efficient it is, and paradoxically, it's so efficient, so clean, it clearly highlights intentional orchestrations to have detrimental effects on people in a psychological aspect. So you became so efficient at damage control. You became so efficient at sweeping things under the rug and keeping information from getting to people that eventually people realize that there's a trend of information not getting to people, and the fact that it doesn't make sense. The information isn't getting to people. So now we're exiting the realm of conspiracy theory. So I thought racism, if you're white and you're racist, is because you hate black people. But it can't just be that you hate black people. It's stupid. It's a lack of human conceptualization as far as reality concerned, something that's substantiated in reality. I mean, imagine trying to change that as it went along, as time went along. It's like, okay, we hate black people. Or you can't speak for all white people. So even if there's a large amount of racist white people, there's going to be some people who aren't racist. And maybe during those times, the amount of people who weren't racist and white was a minority compared to the people who were in certain sections. So what happens? That means they had to tread lightly as far as the general narrative is concerned. But if the general narrative is polluted, tainted, corrupted, and far from the truth, I would say that it calls for open defiance. Open defiance in numbers with spine and back and chest. Because if you take the victimhood stance and you align yourself with using that as something to perpetuate yourself, you can't step up to me as someone who embodies truth with your narrow, short-sighted ways of apprehending the world. I respect that you have your own experience. I respect that you're your own individual. You cannot seize my speech, especially since I speak better than you. And I understand what speech is more than you do. You do not have any jurisdiction to go around revising the way people address other people. You have no idea what you're doing. All you've been told is that you could do it. It's up to me to tell you that you can't do it, or the grays in between, that you could do it, that I wouldn't participate. I'm not going to say you can't go around telling people that. Guess what? I don't feel that I must do that. I feel that you need to come correct and address me in a way that doesn't require me. Arrogance. You're required to address me as. It's not how you deal with people in a realistic manner. Like, realistically, that's not how you deal with people. That's how you deal with people if, one, you're in an ego state, and two, you have a group of people who are invested in making sure that you make the most use of your victim state. They want you to take on that victim state and champion it. And if you do that, you'll be aiding them and perpetuating their abuse into future generations. Let's stop the abuse. If you're abused and you're damaged, and that puts you in a certain position, and throughout your life you're always readjusting and finding your way back to whatever sort of balance, whatever balance you can find for yourself. That's a beautiful thing. Do that, and do that knowing that you have a right to do that as a human. Do that knowing that, just like a lot of other people who have their own unique struggles, you're just going to have to deal with sticking your spine up, having people not approve of you. And all these things get substantiated by fear. You get these couple of instances like the gay bar shootings, and the amount of time that happens for. It always happens for a specific sliver of time, and after that sliver of time is done, they just don't need the narrative anymore, and it just stops happening. Not to say that it never happened, but if it could just pop up and disappear, how real is it, especially if it plays to specific time frames? I haven't really been seeing any videos of police brutality lately. There's other things going on, of course. I'm not saying police brutality isn't real. I'm just saying there's information that's not being distributed. And if I could just get you to put your antennas out in a way to where you can get that information. These are just this is just my attempt to apprehend a dynamic of many dynamics. This is a singular dynamic. And this is more of an identity, political aspect dynamic. Dealing with the usurping of people's pain, suffering, the genuine instances that incite fear, and using that to get millions of dollars under these names. Millions of dollars, random donations for what? Bullshit. To grab money and then money. And what are they using this money for? I wonder what all the millions of dollars of Black Lives Matter was used to fund. I wonder who was made to be helped into office because of that. How much weapons was it's just same thing over here. There's still being money raked out from both sides to this day. And that's so strange considering the vast amount of people who are in reality fighting for themselves. I mean, they're not being genuinely assisted by these people. Otherwise, we see genuine change and genuine assistance and genuine programs installed. I love you. You are beautiful. You are loved. And you are powerful. If you was not powerful, the people who you give power to would not have to do all this running around and psychological covert operations just to get energy from you. Why are they doing that? Why don't they just lock you up in a box and shoot you? You're a slave in a certain capacity. When you realize a capacity in which you are a slave and the capacity in which you're not, the dynamic changes. And it changes dramatically. It changes for the better, and it changes in the way that makes sense. It changes in the way to where children enter the world. It makes sense. It makes more sense than not. You are powerful. You have the ability to influence things in a way that balance things and raise them in a genuine manner. And if that was not the case, then my people, you would not have been burdened with all of the instances of fear from the media, as far as instances both real and fake, as far as you being a victim. It's the same thing over here. Pay attention to who really represents you. Pay attention to who really loves you. Align yourself with doing exchanges in that capacity. mutually beneficial exchanges. And I ask that you be open to receiving information as to what you are enabling. Because this is not a game. And if we get this right, it could be very fun, very sensible, very balanced, very educational, and very uplifting, very real. Very real. This is appalling. And it's appalling especially since when these things come up, they seem to be replaced by something that's equally appalling under a different name that takes us out of our ability to weed out why these things are ridiculous. The same way we keep getting drowned in new iPhones. So it's Black Lives Matter, LGBT, and there's Antifa and all these things, and like, yeah, they have different names and are separate, but the timing and the intent behind it all, there's a theme to it. And all that gets undone by the human element. It gets undone by you prioritizing humanity and the things that contribute to the sustenance of humanity. There's a lack of distribution of resources, and I'm not talking about money. Education, love, acceptance, a lot of intangibles, actually. Intangible resources that enable people to do very real, tangible things and make very real, impactful, tangible works. There's so many suppressed, verbally usurped people in any minority. We need to remind each other to step outside of these labels every now and again in a way that allows us to move past our shallow operations. Because if we're not operating in such a shallow manner, we would not be able to be taken advantage of in such an appalling way. There's too much happening very recently and still happening now to have these kind of games be played in broad daylight without it being challenged. Not under my watch. Stay strong, stay powerful. Open your heart to what's real. What's real is this is all necessary to keep you in a state to where you're not doing the very thing that contributes to balance. And what does that mean? That means you can contribute to balance. It means it's possible. It's all here. All these energy exchanges and this running around and politicking to get you emotional and to get you to run in a certain direction with that emotion wouldn't be necessary if you couldn't do anything. You can do something. You can influence people. Choose to align yourself with something real. A lot of the things that we have been doing are suboptimal. Be open to unlearning and learning. And be open to accepting things that may make you uncomfortable, and seeking to gain new insight from it. I know I was saying goodbye, but I just felt like I had to leave on a certain note, This is the human element. And I will see you guys in the near future with another video, breaking spells. Spells don't love me and they don't love you. Let's revise it and enterprise it. Peace, fam.